Hey everybody, Mamie here with another tumbler tutorial for you today, and we're going to be creating a Grinch tumbler. So if you're interested in how to make one for yourself, let's get started. So I've already prepped my tumbler, sanded it, and used a little bit of alcohol to clean it off. And now I'm using some green acrylic paint mixed with a little bit of Mod Podge, and I'm using a mop brush, or you can use a makeup brush if you have that as well. The puffier and fluffier the brush, the better, because you won't get as many streaks. But you want to work pretty fast with the Mod Podge paint technique because it dries really fast. So I'm trying to make sure that I get a lot of coverage all over, and like make sure I don't leave one area too long to dry on its own. And I only do this if I'm only going to do one color of glitter. Because it will dry too fast if I try to do any other kind of technique. So I'm just going to pour that glitter all over the cup, and this is Ollie by Pamper Your Princess, and I think it's a great green to use for this project, and it has a ton of sparkly flash, so I really love it. And usually I'll spray seal my tumbler after I've added glitter, but since this is just one color, it's not as important, one type of glitter. So for this one, you could just not, but in order to keep it from moving all over the place, I did spray seal it with 2-time Rust-Oleum clear spray paint. And now I'm using my 1-to-1 epoxy to just pretty much put a flood coat over this whole thing. I used about 30 milliliters. I want to make sure that I really get that glitter nice and covered, and then I'm using my torch to pop those bubbles, those micro bubbles that kind of rise to the top. And make sure to use your protective gear as well. And then now let's prepare our elements for the cup design. So I'm using this double-sided adhesive sheet to create our Christmas lights. The adhesive and other materials will be listed in the description box below. I used my Brother Scan and Cut to cut these shapes with a kiss cut, which is about a 3 on the blade length for this paper, but just test yours out just to be sure. And I've also separated them out into rows of 4 so that I can add different glitters on top without them mixing all together. And if you're interested in a particular glitter, just comment down below, because I'm using several different brands and names. So just comment below and I'll let you know what the name is. But these are all fine cut glitters for the Christmas lights. And we're just going to pour the glitter onto the strip, and we're going to rub it in really well and then thump off the excess. And then we'll have those ready to go. And after we get these done, we can start applying our elements to the cup. But I did lightly sand the tumbler before I move to this next step. So I'm going to be showing you just jumping right into it. But I did sand this tumbler lightly beforehand so that you want your tumbler to be nice and smooth before you do this next step. So make sure that you do that, and if it's still not smooth, go ahead and add another layer of epoxy. But it was nice and smooth, so I was able to move on to adding the decals on here. So I purchased all of my elements from the same bundle on Etsy, so that was great, worked out good, and I can link that down in the description below. And I'm starting with the largest elements first so that I can map the Christmas lights around those large decals. So I just find that it works better pretty much always to put the large elements down on the tumbler first and then move on to your smaller elements to fill in those areas. But really this was more of a mapping situation because I wanted to make sure that the Christmas lights were going around the large elements. And so I also cut out the light bulbs in some white vinyl as well. This way my glitter light bulbs would really pop off the green because the adhesive sheets that I used are transparent. And so adding that white really helps them pop off that green. And I'm taking some time to imagine where the string wire will be moving along the design. So it's like if you see me kind of like thinking here and moving my finger around, it's because I'm trying to decide where that wire would go. Putting one light bulb up and one light bulb down, just kind of like I would imagine a real string of lights. And now I am ready to put on the glitter bulbs. And I'm just going to pop those right on top. Easy peasy. Just using my craft knife to pick these up off the paper and just set them right on top. Now I'm taking some Mod Podge and I'm going to seal all these light bulbs because I didn't want to get up and go outside and spray seal the whole thing. So I'm just using some Mod Podge and going right on top of that glitter, sealing it all in because you do not want this glitter to move around and contaminate the rest of the design. So you don't want to have little pieces of all kinds of different color glitter all over everything. So I'm just, they were already stuck down really well with that double-sided adhesive, but just in case, I wanted to take that extra step and not cut any corners because I get so frustrated whenever there's just like loose glitter floating all over in the resin. And with this Mod Podge, you're going to want to make sure that it dries completely before you move on to sealing it with your epoxy because it will turn cloudy. And that pretty much just ruins your whole project. So just let it dry. I mean, if you think it's dry, then just still wait another half hour just to be sure. And I'm using about 15 milliliters of epoxy this time. Making sure to cover all those light bulbs really well. And like later on off camera, I did add a couple more light bulbs at the bottom underneath the tumbler. And what else did I do? Oh yeah, I told you already. I filled in those eyes on the Grinch. But also make sure that you're following your epoxy's instructions on protection. So I just like that to be said. All the companies are, a little bit different. So just make sure whatever epoxy you're using that you're following the instructions on how to protect yourself. So we're going to let this spin for a little while and let it dry for about 12 hours or more. Let's pop those bubbles with that kitchen torch. Keep your torch away from the cup. You just barely want that heat heating that tumbler to pop those micro bubbles. So yeah, we're gonna let it dry for about 12 hours, 24 hours if you really want to make sure it's nice and dry. Okay, so now we're gonna be working on our last layer. Let's see. And we're going to be this is where we're adding our outlines, or also known as offsets, to bring the design together. And I'm using, I think it's just a 0.4 offset on the Brother. I mean, I know all the machines are different, but I have a Brother, and I know very many people don't really use a Brother, so I'm trying to, accommodate people that use the Brother. I've had Cricuts. I've had a Cricut before, several of them actually, and I'm also a card maker, so I use the Brother. It works really well for people that are into paper crafting. But I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go get another Cricut or maybe try the Silhouette this time. I'm not really sure. If you have both or you've had all three, let me know which one was your favorite down below. So anyway, I'm using this holographic vinyl here. And I just thought that it really added that extra shine and interest. And this cup is turning out really well. I had the vision in my head and I was like, man, this is a lot of work. But a little bit of patience and a lot of epoxy, and you can do it. Okay, so now this is the whimsical part, if you will, of the entire project. I am not a freehand artist, so if I can do this, trust me, you can do this also. And you can just maybe look up tutorials on how to draw a loopy line. I'm not really sure. I just drew a little bit of a line, looped it up, and then looped it down. Just looked at some inspiration. I'm going to have pictures at the end so you can see exactly how my loops look if you really need that extra confidence. But yeah, so I'm just drawing a line, a loopty line from each bulb to the other bulb right across that top area. And that top area is where we're going to put the end of the bulbs, so it'll cover up part of that line. This does not have to be perfect. Nobody is going to be paying attention to the string wire part of this, so don't worry about it. Just have fun with it, and go over it if you need to go over it, and you can also erase it with a little bit of alcohol, so it can all be fixed. So give it a try. All right, and then here we're finally going to be adding, let's see here. Oh, well, you want to let that paint pen dry for about 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to be adding here the ends of our light bulbs. And again, just taking my craft knife to pick it up and set it down. Just don't use your fingers because you don't want any of these elements to lift. And after we have all of the elements, we are going to put our last coats of epoxy and we're going to be done. So I just wanted to show you guys, for the last coats of epoxy, I am adding a little bit of sparkle. And this is the microfine glitter here that I'm going to be using in warm diamond. I'm just going to mix that right into the epoxy. And you don't want to add too much of any kind of like glitter on these final coats, because you don't want for your epoxy to become bumpy, like where the glitter is, there's too much glitter and it becomes bumpy. So just a little bit goes a long way. You really don't need a lot. It'll still add a ton of sparkle. So just kind of keep that ratio in mind. You don't want to add a ton in there. Just a little bit will be enough. And so we're going to just cover this really, really well on top and bottom, and get that bottom side really well, because for some reason epoxy likes to kind of shy away from those bottom sides. So I make sure to coat those really well. And then I've got my torch. I'm gonna pop those bubbles, and I do fill in those eyes of the Grinch with some black before I do the other final coat. So I did 2 final coats, but I do go in and fill that yellow part with some black. So the final pictures are gonna be a little bit different, but pretty much everything else is the same. So yeah, this is it. I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. I'm kind of just now getting back into doing tutorials, so sorry if this one was a little bit like, I don't know, just a little bit off, because it's just been a while, and this was a really long one for me to jump into. I had to do a lot of editing, but thank you guys for sticking around for the whole thing. And whenever you are totally done, you are gonna just clean up your top rim, and I just take my craft knife here and just go around the side, as you can see how I'm doing here, to get rid of any little bits of epoxy. And then you're just going to clean that up with a little bit of acetone around the rims on the inside, not the outside, only on the inside, because you don't want to put any acetone around the outside. It will ruin the epoxy. So after that, and then you're just going to wash it up with some dish soap and water, and not too hot, but you're just going to wash it up, and then you'll be done. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed, and stick around for the very end where I have some still shots coming up, and I will see you guys soon in the next video.